can send him a message here in just a minute. Okay. All right, and we'll call the meeting to order here at 6:02. And Doug, can you call the roll?
Chair Holmquist?
Here.
Mr. Homburg?
Here.
Ms. Fallis?
Here.
Mr. Stein? Here. Mr. Grice?
Here.
And Alder DePula, Ms. Fox, and Mr. Chapman are excused.
I'm just sending a quick message to you. Okay. We need approval of the minutes from the April 13th, 2026 meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, any corrections? Chris?
On page 5, Doug, if you would, when you get to what I was talking about during the review, I made it very clear that I felt it should be first floor commercial. And I just think that's an important point to have in the minutes for them.
So to clarify that during that paragraph. On page
Somewhere in
5.
there, you just
Yes.
talk about all the things I mentioned. It's, I don't care where, but somewhere in there it should talk about that.
Absolutely.
All right, any other corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. There's no recommended change of the order of business tonight. There are no appearances. Nobody in the room. Is there anybody online to appear on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, unmute yourself or raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we'll close the appearance section. We'll go on to 6A, which is a public hearing for Galway companies on the request for approval of a general development plan or GDP for the site located between 5600 Gisholt Drive and 1709 West Broadway. And this is for a mixed-use development, case number 225-2025. And Doug, do we have someone?
We have some slides, and I'm expecting Mr. Doran is going to present.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Doug, did you want to give an overview first, or would you like me to go first?
If you can, during the public hearing, I'll kind of go into the staff report during the consideration of action.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time tonight to look at this again. I think this is our third appearance for GDP, and Peter Armitek is also going to give an overview of some of the changes we made since we were in front of Plan Commission last, but I'll just give a quick overview on some of the major changes, and then I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Since our last meeting, we had several meetings with staff as well as Public Works, and we were able to come up with a plan to move the existing WPS Drive west to line it up with WPS Drive to the south, as you can see on the plan. This has created a much more efficient plan, a safer plan, one that WPS supports, one city school supports, as well as City of Monona Public Works. We were required to get a traffic study done by Dane County, which we did get completed, sent to Dane County, and have already received some comments back. I'm sure Doug will go into some of the details and specifics of those as well, but overall it appears there's support from Dane County, City of Monona Public Works, and City of Madison as well to move this intersection just to the west a little bit. One of the greatest benefits of doing this is it did increase the public park size to right around 1.5 acres. It gave us a little bit more breathing room between the buildings, gives the city a little bit more room for programming the park, and also allowed us to add some surface parking to support the commercial on the first phase of our project. The units or the buildings as proposed in front of you right now, we plan to build phase one first. Phase one is the two buildings that are directly in front of you to the east of the park. That's about 357 units. Of those units, 64 studios, 195 one bedrooms, and 98 two bedrooms. I know that when we were in front of Plan Commission last time, we had talked about doing what we call the B1 building, the southern building is a pure senior building. And since that time, we've decided to commingle all the units together and make it a one large project. We do intend to design several of the units to support the growing population of Monona. We see that down the street at current 1 and current 2. There is a need, we believe, for high quality aged housing, but we feel that we could be more successful and deliver better product to this population by not segregating them in a specific building and designing specific units in both buildings where they can be among the active residents as well. I think that's going to create a situation where they don't feel like they're segregated. A couple of other things from our last call. There were some specific questions, I think, that I wanted to make sure that we addressed. Just go through my list. There were some questions about EV stalls. Our EV plan now currently shows 10 EV stalls installed from the beginning, and about 46 EV stalls will be EV ready. So a total of 56 EV ready stalls, including the 10 that will be built right away. Those are going to be located within the parking structure on the lower level and the first floor. The plans, there was a comment from the last time around to specifically mark where the bike stalls are going to be. We have 202 total secured and covered bike stalls within the building. Of those, 140 are wall hung, 62 are floor mounted, and 12 are unsecured and outdoor. There is sufficient parking for the project without any of the public parking. Right now we have 454 covered parking stalls, 166 private surface stalls, and of those we'll be doing cross parking between the commercial and the residential to ensure that we meet code. There were some questions about what the park is going to look like, and that's something we've been working on with Jake from Parks. That'll come back to Plan Commission depending what it looks like in the future. But as of last Friday, Jake has engaged Blake Thiessen from Parkitecture, I believe it is, who is also the planner was the planner for Grand Crossing Park. I know Blake is starting to work on concepts and is planning to have a concept to Jake sometime within the next 30 to 60 days. Initial thoughts for the park were potentially some curling areas, food carts, potentially an area for an expanded farmer's market, and maybe some structures within the park to just give it some distinction. I think the last thing I have on my list was we were asked to bring kind of a summary of what are some of the green initiatives that we're doing for the project. We talked about the EV stalls. Most all of the stormwater for this project is underground. Significantly reduced surface parking on the site. We are going above and beyond what the code requires for building mechanical and efficiency. We'll have advanced controls for lighting and mechanical systems in all the common areas. And we'll be doing everything we can with construction to be efficient with our material usage and our construction management practices. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Peter and let Peter talk through the other changes that we made from the architectural side.
Great, thanks, Steve. So the 3 points I wanted to mention, one change that you might notice in the B1 building is that the upper floors rotated 180 degrees. And that was really to just achieve better sun exposure on the pool that's going to be facing south on that deck. The second thing I wanted to mention were the elevations. Doug, if you could go back to slide 27 or 201. So one of the things we heard from the commission last time we met was that it was hard to distinguish what was what in terms of the elevations. So in addition to the elevations, we included diagrams on each of the elevation sheets that shows where we're planning on locating masonry or our brick veneer. So you can see that over the next 4 sheets. And then lastly, renderings, we were asked to provide some kind of overall aerial renderings that showed both phase 1 and phase 2. So if you go forward to 232, here's another aerial rendering of the project from the south looking northeast. You can see Topgolf in the foreground. The first phase, A1 and B1, are in the northeast corner or to the right of the park. And the phase 2, which is A2 and B2, are to the west of the park to the left. A couple extra additional renderings we added. You can just sort of flip through the next one. Here's a view looking southeast from Broadway. The commercial space is on the first floor of this building, and there's an associated outdoor patio. Next slide shows the same view at dusk. The following slide looks at the project from Broadway looking in the southwest direction. You can see how the facade kind of continues south on this L-shaped building that's on Broadway. And then next slide. This looks at the west end of the A1 building where there's retail on the first floor and that associated patio with the park right behind you. And the next slide shows that at dusk. The following slide is from the park. It shows some activity on the northern edge of the park. The A1 building is on the left, the B1 building is on the right. And the next slide shows that at dusk. And then the next slide was a request from the commission the last time we met that asked us to show the entry off of Broadway. So this is the north entry into the A1 building. It's in the recess or the gap between the 2 buildings. And it shows kind of the large canopy that gives them some weather protection overhead. Then the following slide is the last aerial we looked at. That's all I have, Doug.
Thanks.
All right, seeing no one else here for the public hearing section, we can close that and move on to item 6B, which is the consideration of action for Galway companies on the request for approval of the general development plan, GDP, for the site located between 5600 Gishold Drive and 1709 West Broadway, and this is for mixed-use development, case number 225-2025. Doug?
Sorry, could we just
Yep.
double check if we do have a few people
Oh,
online? If
absolutely.
Anybody else
Yep.
for the public hearing,
I apologize.
no problem. Anybody else online that would like to speak or appear during the public hearing section for the GDP?
Hey Doug, this is Andrew McCready from WPS. I just wanted to thank Steve for his work in reviewing the plan, specifically around the new traffic coming into WPS Drive on the new boulevard. We're very supportive of this, and we think this will bring better organization to the site traffic than we were looking at in previous commission meetings. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, is there anybody else online that'd like to add in during the public hearing section that was prematurely closed? So we'll reopen it.
I'm not seeing anybody else.
All right, now that we don't have anybody else, we'll close that. Thanks, Doug, for catching that. We'll move on to the item B, which is the consideration of action for Galway Company's request for approval of GDP for the site located between 5600 Gishold and 1709 West Broadway. This is for mixed-use development, 225-2025. Doug.
Thank you. So lots to cover in here. Certainly the staff report included in the meeting packet for anybody following along. We'll have more detail, but I'll try and give an overview here. Obviously, it's a large-scale project. Just a few things I do want to cover. So the request this evening is for the general development plan, seeking approval from the Plan Commission. This would be a mixed-use development located on West Broadway, near West WPS Drive and the intersection with West Broadway. A total of 4 buildings located around a central park that will be constructed in 2 phases. The apartments will have shared amenities between each phase, and there are 669 units total that are proposed. The site is nearly 12.5 acres, with just over 5 acres envisioned for phase 1. Property is zoned Community Design District, CDD, which allows this planned community development process. The intention of the PCD is to be able to provide flexibility in planning for larger sites and to consider these as part of a phased redevelopment. Also pointing out that this is part of redevelopment area number 15, meaning that it would require both CDA and City Council approval for consistency with those redevelopment plans. The applicant is currently in negotiations and discussions with the CDA as well, seeking TIF assistance for this. So the CDA is certainly aware of the project, have been kept up to speed as this has moved through as well. So as far as the history of the project, there have been 2 other pre-hearing conferences, and now the 3rd meeting here is scheduled for consideration. The 2016 comprehensive plan envisions the site as commercial use in both the current and future land use maps. The Capital Area Regional Planning Commission definition for that, as listed from the comp plan, is that this is for uses that include retail, service, commercial, and office uses. The reimagine and repositioning of the western portion of WPS campus includes the Topgolf that's now under construction that was developed by the same applicant that's coming forward this evening. And staff feels that the commitment to the retail and the restaurant space at the base of this building across both phases is important to create that dynamic destination, help reposition the sites, but also to align with the comprehensive plan. Also of note is that in 2026 here, we are updating the comprehensive plan as well as including corridor studies for the Broadway corridor as well as Monona Drive, and expecting sort of the vision for that and the redevelopment of those key sites along those corridors to be really sort of articulated more in those documents as well. As far as the proposed land use, the unit mix, I'm sorry, it's going to range from studios through to 2-bedroom den units with everything in between. The stated intent for the development is that it will be an inclusive community with a wide range of renters, accommodating the demand from empty nesters, allowing them to stay within the community. That's going to be accommodated through building layout, accessibility elements to the building, but as was mentioned during the pre-hearing or the public hearing, they will not be separate buildings anymore. Instead, they will be mixed between buildings instead. This does align with some of the elements of the 2016 comprehensive plan. The aging community, aging population that we do have within the city, and we have a greater percentage of elderly population as compared to the county, and those trends have continued even from the 2016 comprehensive plan. Additionally, the comprehensive plan outlines the need for sustainable redevelopment projects, including efficient infill sites. So the site design, one of the big changes that you will notice from the last pre-hearing is the proposed realignment of WPS Drive. This also has the impact on the overall site layout, specifically the park and the balance of units between the 2 buildings. This is a result of extensive internal discussions with city staff, the city's consulting engineer for roadways, Dane County, as well as sort of consultation with City of Madison, as well as the private property owners, specifically WPS. So the layout plans that you see before you this evening sort of are the culmination of that, and one of the main things here is that straight line, sort of the straight street of WPS Drive, and the moving of that signal to the west. In addition to that, there would also be a proposed access point on the eastern side of the site, closer to the base of development, slightly less of a sort of main point, I would say, more of a pressure relief option. But you'll also see in some of the site plans that were submitted, and we also have them, we can pull them up again this evening, some traffic calming measures. There's a mountable, sort of a mountable area as well as roundabout included as well. As part of the WPS Drive realignment plans, a traffic impact analysis was requested by Dane County. That was included within the meeting packet. I did not include the appendix, but the main content of the plan was included. That has been submitted to the county, and there's been a lot of discussion between the city and the county as it relates to that. I think some refinements take place, but overall, I would say a general comfort with the plan as proposed, and sort of existing operations to future operations do seem to be possible. A couple things that have been brought up in previous discussions were the importance of the service vehicles, circulation, commercial deliveries. A commercial delivery plan was included within the submittal here for the GDP, but specifically I think that was 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. There may be some discussion as it relates to sort of hours outside of that, food deliveries, visitors, those kind of things, but also for the commercial spaces if they do have deliveries coming in off hours. Pedestrian connections are accommodated throughout the site, both with the maintenance of the sidewalk along West Broadway, but also with sidewalks throughout the site, obviously culminating in the central public park element as well. The raised pedestrian crossing at the central intersection with WPS Drive is also going to be an important safety feature and sort of allow for some of that traffic calming as well. Traffic calming and sort of general design has been something that's been discussed, but of course will be refined in work with Public Works Committee as it relates to some of the street layouts and some of those designs. Bicycles are accommodated with an 8-foot wide multi-use path that will connect to the east to the base of development and will allow for connectivity across Broadway onto the Lake Loop and allow for visitors to enter the site, residents to be able to enjoy recreational use and alternative transportation options. Wanted to point out the green space calculations. We do have those this evening, and we can certainly run through those after this staff report. There were some elements that were not clear as part of the submittal, and so some things to clarify there. It has previously been discussed that given the applicant is planning to dedicate the public park, but also to pay full park fees, that this can be accounted for as part of the green space. There was comfort for that, but just sort of delineating the percentages here will be an important part of the GDP consideration. There is a finding of fact included that may or may not be needed depending on the outcome of that. As was mentioned as well, the park design is something that's being considered right now in collaboration with the parks director. They have a design team looking into this now. That will be reviewed in part with the Parks Board, but would most likely come back through here as a PIP, as a phase of that for the design. One element that I know the Parks Director is looking for, though, is the impact of that design and the potential impact of that on the green space. Let's say there's hardscape or there's elements that are included within that park that may not be traditional green open space, and how those calculations may be impacted, just depending on the programming. As was mentioned, I think curling's been considered. I think there's some hardscape areas potentially for food trucks and things like that, just how those things may come into play. Parking for the development, that's obviously phased between the two sites. One thing to clarify is that the tables that you see in the staff report, that is all for the private parking. There is also public parking that's envisioned. Those numbers were estimated to be around 83 stalls total, but will be determined again with the final street design. So really the numbers in the staff report focus specifically on the private, the stalls being proposed by the applicant this evening. The overall 890 stalls of covered parking are proposed. These would be shared between each of the buildings, each of the phases, as well as 208 surface stalls. As was mentioned in the staff report, they would be to serve the private parking, so that would be for the commercial space, but it would also be for the residents as well of the buildings. So something I know that we have encountered up the street as well is with the success of the mixed-use project, how some of this is signed, how some of this is regulated as well. I think that's a suggested discussion point this evening as well. Overall, the site has a 34-stall deficit on private parking, but as mentioned, there's right around 83 public stalls that are envisioned as well. Couple caveats with that. Firstly, that does not include any parking for the park. We don't have park standards for parking, but certainly something that may need to be considered. A 1.5 acre site, a 1.5 acre park that may well be programmed pretty heavily. Something to consider there. but also the standard one stall per 300 has been used as kind of a straight line assumption for the commercial. Once those uses are more clearly known, better defined, that may be altered there as well, so just something else to potentially consider there. Staff welcomes the inclusion of the bike parking within the plans. The secure bike parking is extensive within the building. One point that may be discussed is a little bit more of that parking at grade for visitors to the commercial spaces, but just folks moving through the site as well. Secure parking is great for the residents, but any visitors would be looking for some of that at grade. Overall, the plans show 6-story buildings, the L-shaped plus the U-shaped buildings across each phase. The hard edges sort of define that welcoming or that entry into the park, into the site. There had been some discussion about step backs, and that's something we typically see on these larger buildings on the top floor to just kind of soften that massing a little bit. It could be something the commission chooses to discuss. Certainly appreciate the additional materials that have been included that show some of the breakup there of the linear plane of the building, especially along West Broadway, and how that is sort of modified and breaks it up across. It gives more of the impression of a couple buildings rather than one. And the materials also highlight the masonry, the extent of that. It's around the ground floor, but it does extend all the way to the top of the building, to the top of the 6th floor at the eastern and northern facades. And we do have a materials board here this evening as well for some more detail there. Overall, the 669 units proposed across 12.5 acres has a density of 54 units per acre. Again, staff report has sort of comparisons for that as it relates to other projects that we've looked at in the city. But I think generally the commission has felt this is an opportunity for density in order to support the mixed-use development. And certainly just considering how this relates to both the commercial building with WPS and their height and massing of the building, but also Topgolf and specifically the net pole heights. There's an opportunity here to kind of frame in the development a little bit, and certainly from West Broadway to have that residential feel as well. Being mindful of the single-story commercial just to the west, and sort of effective landscaping and buffering will be important there. Green infrastructure was included as well, with EV stalls as well as EV ready included. And final thing I would just highlight is a staff memo was attached. This was sort of the outcome of some of the internal meetings that took place with kind of a holistic staff position that was put forward. I would point out it's about a month old at this point, so certainly conversations have happened since as well, but I just wanted to put it in there as kind of a reference point as I was seeking department head feedback for that, and certainly a couple others I've referenced some previous feedback and some materials. I did check with each of the department heads. They were comfortable and they wanted that information still resubmitted and put back in. So with that, the recommendation is discussion, but also does include a potential recommendation of approval with findings of fact and conditions as listed. Thank you.
All right. That's a lot. Corinne, you're getting ready. That means you get to go first.
Well, I had a question before we get
Okay.
into it, and it was about the staff memo.
Yes.
Because I did recognize that that there's been discussion since then.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically, I was wondering if you could speak to where the discussion has gone with the public safety impacts, because I think at the last pre-hearing, that was something that the commission, all of the commission was concerned about as well. So
Yes.
if you could shed a little light on that, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So I think kind of two elements to that. I think there's the EMS concern in terms of that I think is still included within this meeting packet. So possibly some of the unit mix, I can't speak for the department head there, but I think possibly the unit mix and the softening of this not being a restricted building, but instead being sort of all-encompassing, may assist with some of that. I think from the police side, I believe there to be an opportunity for almost an impact analysis for this, that there are studies that can be done that sort of say for every, X number of population or X number of units that come in, on a typical city, you may be looking for another officer or something like that. So I think that's something that is not just unique to this one, but for all development that we're looking at across the city. And I think that was something that was discussed, whether that is considered as part of TIF, a TIF eligible expense. Many of these redevelopment sites would be within districts that could support that. But I think certainly I would expect that's something that we'd have a little more clarity if it were to get to city council, to be able, for the alders to be able to deliberate and consider that as part of that as well.
I'll only add in a small little piece, a discussion that came up at a previous city council meeting that is adjacently relevant. There was a discussion regarding our parkland dedication fee. In our last fee revision at the end, last budget, so last fall sometime, we increased that parkland dedication fee from roughly $1,400 a unit for rental up to $3,000 a unit. That was to be in alignment that we would be with our neighboring peers, and we've been falling behind in that fee over time. That fee has been raised to $3,000 per unit for rental units and $4,000 for new houses, but there's not a lot of whole new housing going up. So there was some discussion because there was a request for a consideration of an ordinance change to allow a reduction up to 50% of that for affordable home projects. It failed at council. And some of the discussion had to do with total fees in Monona versus total fees elsewhere. So just like a napkin summary. In most communities, not only would you have a parkland dedication fee, you might have other impact fees for development. And some of those might be for police, fire, EMS, or other types of impacts on city services. We currently don't have that in our ordinance. So a development, the only fee outside of your typical building permit fees are for parkland dedication. And so there are some of us on council that believe that we should be looking at total fees, including some other impact fees, and consider them for future projects and to codify in our ordinances so they can be applied. Those are all dependent on what are the fee structures in place at the time of pulling occupancy, not building permit, if I have that correct.
I'm not sure about impact fees specifically. Parkland would be at time of building permit.
Meaning if there were changes between now and when this project or any other project move forward, it's whatever fee structure is in place at that time. So there could be some possibilities of changes between now and then. We don't know. But I think that was kicking off the major discussion of like, how many units have we added over time in comparison to just the number of housing units in the city 10 years ago compared to what we have now. It's a significant increase, and with that, there's only a fraction of increase that you're getting through tax revenue, but if your demand for services are just way exceeding that, you've got to come up with a different way to meet that need. So a long-winded way to say, yes, it's currently on people's minds, and hopefully we'll be able to have some more discussions about that.
Well, it seems pretty important, given, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I did watch it, and that was proposing a lot of units, and this is a lot of units, and just, so I was curious if there's a timeline for when some kind of a study might be done, if any, or if, it sounds like there's maybe not a timeline for any, but that it is something that is being moved forward in some manner.
Yeah, all I can say is the most recent recommendation was actually an offer for a reduction of 50% in the parkland fees, and that was turned down by the council on a split vote 4-3, 4-2. It was a split 4-2 to decline that reduction. That was specific to affordable housing projects and specific to parkland dedication fees. But within that conversation was the larger discussion about, hey, wait a minute, we don't have any other impact fees in our ordinance right now, and when might we consider doing that?
Okay.
Which I would say continues to come up, especially with just the sheer number of apartment projects, and the need that you're gonna have, at least around police, fire, and EMS. No timeline.
Okay. Thanks.
But since you got us started, do you want to kick us off? It doesn't mean you have to
Sure.
come up with all your comments on your first round.
Okay.
We'll go round and round a few times if need be, so.
All right, so that was a big one. The next question, some of it is just clarification as well, because there was some, this is a question for Steve, I think. So there was a note in the memo as well about how there had been discussion that we would potentially accept the dedication of the parkland after the completion of phase 2, but that the developer had asked for an 18-month timeframe, or within 18 months. And I guess I'd like a little clarification about what the nuance is there. I'm not sure I understand.
Doug?
I would say that some of that is still evolving. I wouldn't say that the current position is as portrayed in the memo, and I think that's evidenced by the fact that design is now beginning to be engaged. It's certainly a budget question once it comes to that, but I think part of this as well is that I believe this development is on a 20-month build timeline for phase 1. Whereas the park would be much shorter within that. So I think sort of having that as a separate PIP item, sort of phased itself, I think there's been discussion as to when that delivers and how that delivers, but I think that there's at least breathing room there that they wouldn't need to be on the same track in order to complete that. But I would ultimately say, I think from a staff level, a lot of it is budget related, as it certainly the parkland fees would be significant for this project, but I think depending on the design, it may still need additional funding. So.
Okay.
Chris?
I'm not trying to take over your spot, but as pertains to that, part of that memo also said that the road dedication wouldn't be accepted until phase 2. That would be problematic, because then WPS would not front on a public road. So I don't see how we could delay that, because WPS needs full access and they need to front on a public road. So I see the point Corinne's bringing up as a bit of a problem area.
Right.
That should be explained, how we do that?
Yes. And
If
go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, if it's helpful, I'm happy to talk about, as soon as we got that letter, we made it pretty clear that, in order for us to move forward with this project, we need the park land and the roads dedicated with the CSM from day one. So our intention is not to pull a building permit until we have the park and the roads dedicated. We're not able to do this project unless the park and the roads are dedicated from day one. And those discussions have occurred with city staff. It appears we have general agreement on that, but Doug, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can talk from that standpoint.
I would agree with that, and as a developer, they would be building public infrastructure for the city on that road as part of their developer's agreement, but it would be on a deeded public road.
Yep.
And for them, then they can build that road and then flip the other road over. You can't really do it until they build the new road.
No, that was my understanding.
Yes, I would say as part of the CDA discussions as it relates to development agreements and TIF assistance as well, the roadway, in particular, less so the park, but certainly the roadway, is absolutely being considered as part of that as well. So, and that would ultimately go to city council, as would the roadway design and those elements. But I think as shown in the CSM that we'll review later this evening, those streets are envisioned to be dedicated. And as the developer says, in terms of the timing, that's going to be pretty early on for this to proceed, as shown.
All right, back to Corinne.
Okay. And I know we haven't gotten to the PIP, but
Big picture, but
Yeah.
if you get in the details, it
yeah,
won't hurt.
a little bit.
Procedural question. Since we're kind of combining the PIP and the GDP, we're having a pre-hearing for the PIP, but it's all in the same plan, all in the same report.
Well-
Isn't it fine to talk about both at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some details that you can get into, but I think there's some pieces that we want to make sure that we have distinct agenda items and some distinct conversations, but some of it's clearly going to bleed over. And I think that's fine. So if there's something specific that you want to indicate for the PIP in this item, just try to indicate that so we can note it in the notes and make sure that we have minutes that are reflective of both discussions.
Okay.
But we just know they're commingled so closely together that's going to happen. So.
Okay. All right. Now we'll start.
Yeah.
Steve, I had a question about the senior housing, because that was something that I thought was really interesting about the project at the last pre-hearing, and I understand what you're saying about integrating it in, and I think that sounds like a fine idea. But I'm just wondering, the change moves it from having a whole building that's age restricted to now having some mixture of some units that would be dedicated for senior housing. And do you have a sense for how many you're going to have dedicated, or not dedicated, but set aside for senior housing?
Yeah, and they're not dedicated or set aside. We're designing them to be, where they're attractive to that population, right? Hand bars and showers and walk-in showers and things like that. Initially the goal is to be in that 15 to 20% target range, but have the flexibility to increase or adjust that as we need to. And that's really the big reason for the change, is just, have the flexibility to go either way, and also make sure that they feel integrated in the building. And that's something, again, we see that at current 1 and current 2, that population is integrated into the building. They're into a more lively environment. They share the amenities with the rest of the population, and it feels like more of an inclusive community.
Okay. And I guess just to start too, I still really like this project a lot, and I think it's appropriate for the location, for the zoning, all that. So then looking at the circulation, I did have a couple of questions about that. Let's see. So with the parking stalls that you have dedicated or shown as for commercial loading zone from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., you have quite a few of those. It's on sheet 301. You have, and you had the diagram for how the trucks would pull in, and that looked like that would work well. But what happens if somebody parks in those spots? Is there 24-hour staffed lobby in case one of those cars needs to be towed so that a commercial truck can pull in? Because if there's someone that's just parked there, they're ignoring the signs, then that can't be used for delivery.
Sure. So we don't have somebody 24/7 that staffs the lobby, but what we do is we contract with Schmidt's Towing to patrol our lots 24/7, and they make routes, and if people are not parked where they're supposed to be, then they do tow.
Okay, all right. And then with respect to the residential deliveries, the food delivery, the Amazon delivery, I didn't see any specific location for that. And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about having a couple of spots dedicated out front of the lobby for those uses?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at kind of where the lobby is, I don't know that we'll have dedicated stalls there, but we are going to have some designated 15-minute or new resident stalls right at the entrance there. If you kind of look at where the main lobby is, kind of just to the right of the handicap stalls. Oh, those are like next to the handicap stalls. Nope, on the B1 building. Yep, right there. So that is kind of more in general with where the main lobby is going to be, just to this, a little bit south of that actually even. And that will be the main lobby for both buildings. And so the mailroom for both buildings will be there. All UPS drivers, all FedEx drivers, all Amazon drivers will come in through that main lobby, kind of in the center of that building, the B1 building. And so we will have some 15-minute only stalls there for really kind of just flex, right? I mean, new residents will come in there for showings, for checking out the building. Amazon drivers typically won't use those, but they certainly could. We often see them just kind of pull up, unload, and go. If you look at the building plans for that B1 building, one of the things we're doing, and let me just see if it's, Jennifer, is the Amazon delivery plan in this set? Let me just see. I can kind of talk through it either way, but one of the things we're doing with this building that we've not done before, that is going to work out great, is we have a dedicated door on that west side of the B1 building for all delivery drivers to kind of come in directly from the parking lot into our parcel room and place packages directly there versus having to come through our lobby, leave packages in the lobby, or wait at a vestibule for somebody to let them in. Drivers will be able to come in right where that mouse cursor is, place packages in the parcel room, and then go out and be on their way.
Okay, I think that sounds like that will be really useful, because this is a big building, so there's going to be a lot of traffic, and having dedicated spots for them to be able to know that they'll be able to pull their truck in and then quickly get in and out, I think that'll be really helpful.
Yep, that's something we discussed in detail, because what we did not want is we didn't want those delivery drivers driving kind of in between the A1 and the B1 building and entering A1. We wanted to keep all those drivers right where that cursor is and be able to kind of just come into the parking lot, turn, do a full circle and drive right back out, not have to drive into the smaller parking lot that sits between A1 and B1 and then figure out how to back in or back out of that area. They have no reason to ever even enter that part of the parking field.
I really like the change in the layout of the road. That did seem to just clear up a lot of challenges that we talked about at the last pre-hearing conference. With the parking, it's hard for me to, visualize how this would all work, especially with such a big park. That first lot, or that lot that we were just talking about, that's where park users are going to want to park. And I guess I'm just wondering how you think the parking lot by the pickleball courts fits in with the other parking spots. Because I'm thinking if I'm a resident, I'm probably not going to go park over where those pickleball courts are unless my apartment, I guess, is on that side. And I'm also wondering, this is maybe more of a PIP thing, but are those pickleball courts going to be gated specifically for the residents? Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of people probably trying to use those.
Yeah, so two really great questions, both things that we've thought through. First question, they will be gated so that they will be just for residents only. And then the second question, that parking is going to primarily be for guests of the residential users. That's not necessarily going to be for the residents. We may have some residents parking there, but we need a place for guests to park so that they're not parking in the public stalls and that they're not parking in our commercial stalls. And that's where we will allow guests to park.
So are you thinking you're going to sign that in some way? Okay.
Yep. We'll sign that and monitor that, and people will have to register to use those stalls for their guests.
Okay. And is the retail, are there entrances or different retail on the north side and the south side, or is it two entrances to the same
Business, to the same business.
Yeah.
So two things with the commercial. The commercial is just, the entrance is just going to be primarily just on the south side. The retailers that we're talking to are going to want people to be able to park and walk in from the parking field, not walk in from the sidewalk. We will have an opportunity if somebody does want to have an entrance off the sidewalk to, easily put a storefront door, so that they could walk out onto Broadway as well. The other thing I wanted to point out, which I should have pointed out in the pre-hearing, is originally we had about 12,000 square feet of commercial. In this plan, we do now have just over 16,000 square feet of commercial, so we have increased the commercial.
Wow, okay. Is that based on some of the conversations that you've had?
What we ended up doing is we had some amenity area on the first floor just to the west of the A1 lobby, and we moved that amenity area up to the second floor of the B1 building, which allowed us to put a little bit more commercial for lease space on that first floor. Essentially, it was our gym. So we had the gym, the fitness center on the first floor there. We moved the fitness center to the B1 building, and now the B1 building has the fitness center, has a club room tied to it. It feels like a more cohesive amenity area that walks out onto the rooftop deck.
Okay. And then is the dumpster enclosure, is that the only dumpster enclosure?
That is the dumpster enclosure only for the commercial users. All the other dumpster enclosures for all the residentials, all interior.
So how are they going to get from, is there a hallway that they can walk through, or do they have to go down the sidewalk on Broadway and over to that dumpster enclosure?
Either down the sidewalk, or they can or there's a path through the parking structure out.
Okay, that's pretty far.
It is. We looked at parking, we looked at the dumpsters a lot here, and we could have easily put a dumpster right at the main entrance where the parking field is, but we did not want a dumpster enclosure at the entrance to this project.
Okay, let's see. With respect to the massing of the building and the way that it looks, I think, yeah, typically we ask for step backs on it, but I don't actually mind. I'm curious what the other commissioners are going to say. I don't actually mind the look of it, given this location and the fact that we do have the Topgolf nets that are going up in the back. I think it fits in that way. As far as the colors, there seems to be a lot of white on the back that I wasn't in love with, but otherwise I like the color palette that you've picked. It just seems like on the back, on the front side, there's a lot of variation in the colors, and then on the back of the A1 building, the L-shaped building, there's a lot of white right in the middle. So, I don't know. That was the one thing that stood out to me. And there's probably other things, but I'm going to pass it off to Chris. Or
Before we go there, we're going to try to bring up the elevation
okay.
of the south side of the A1 building so we can see what is what here.
I think it was there. Isn't it that one?
There you go.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, and maybe I just wasn't seeing it, but it looked like it was the white
Yeah.
cement siding, and then maybe the gray or opal mason, Indiana cast stone. No, what was the name of that? Yeah. Yeah.
So that whole field in the middle is, I think, item 1, which I think is Arctic White Hardy, which is on the board.
Which I think is something we've seen recently, and it's very, very white. So that was, I like the white. It just looked like a lot in this spot right here.
And Steve,
And that area faces the B1 building, not Broadway.
Right. Yep.
And Steve, has there been any consideration of breaking up that sea of white in hearing some of the other discussions of other developments that have used Arctic white in large field like that?
I'm happy to talk about it. mean, I know exactly the project you're talking about, and I had sort of the same, wow when I saw that first as well. I think part of the reason that we picked white here and the amount that we did is if you look at where it is on the site, it's facing the B1 building, right? And there's sort of this tight little area there between those two buildings, and it's not going to get a ton of sunlight right there. And so we felt like a brighter color there, like a white there, will make it feel bigger and more, a little bit, more light. But if you don't feel it's the appropriate color, I'm happy to talk about it. We could look at maybe going a little bit beiger or grayer with a shade there, so it's not so stark. But I definitely want a lighter color there just to make that area in between A1 and B1 there and that little parking vestibule feel open and airy.
All right, thank you. Chris? Yeah. And you don't have to start with the siding unless you want to.
I'm just gonna start with what Steve just left off, because I don't think you have to worry about making this building feel bigger. You said it makes it feel bigger.
Maybe the space between the two buildings to feel
Okay.
bigger, yes.
Yeah, just not feel cavernous is really kind of the main thing. I don't want it to feel dark back there because it's between the two buildings.
I understand what you said, it makes it feel bigger. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think what Corinne's talking about, what I might agree with, is not eliminating all of the white, but having some accents in there, some different things going other than that entire facade that you've chosen to go white. Just make some accent areas or something in there that would fit architecturally with the rest of the building.
Yeah, the white is nice, it's
Yeah,
just a lot.
yeah. It's all just breaking it up. We're sensitive to arctic white right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, and and I think that's good advice, so we'll look hard at doing that, so thank you for that.
Okay, is there a representative from Strand here tonight?
Not from Strand, no.
Okay, because I just wanted to talk a little bit about the traffic study, the TIA. They talked about, when you read through it, I think it was node 300, where that's the right in, right out node, where on the traffic study, it said there's I think a 225-foot backup, and they're 325 feet away, something like that, and it's fine. And then Strand said for some more restrictive standards, there'll actually be a backup of 333 feet, and that's only 325 from the intersection. To me, that still passes. That is so close. It's like, okay, so there's a third of a car length short of having all the stacking they need for where it's at. I think for Monona, I would say we should be fine with that. I think what it'll come down to is whether or not Dane County is fine with that, but I'm not sure why you would. How should I word that? I think in the sense of doing it and having it the right way, it's fine. And if you look at their traffic count for that, there's only one car backing up, so perhaps during that rush hour with 335 feet, there might be two cars backing up at that right out, but I don't see that as a big concern. So, and that's the only major comment I saw on the TIA.
And again, with kind of things moving as well, Steve, did you want to address that? I think, has there at least been discussion of a possible adjustment there?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Chris, can you, just for my clarification, are you talking about the new proposed right in, right out to the east of the site?
Correct. That's,
Yeah, okay,
I think it's
so-
node 300 in the traffic report.
Yeah, okay, so we did receive some initial feedback from the county, and it doesn't appear there's support for that right in, right out. We were also asked to adjust some things in the traffic study, which we did. We just got the revised report from TADI late this afternoon. It doesn't recommend any further changes, so we believe the county is going to be satisfied with it. But to satisfy the county, we believe we're going to need to remove that right in, right out. Leave the roundabout as you see it, but remove the right in, right out, which we are okay with. But I think the final plan to be constructed will not include the right in, right out.
Okay, well, that's the point I was looking at. I suspect there'll be a condition here about the TIA, because a TIA is pretty central to a GDP. Okay. Let's talk, well, we should go back. I mentioned it on the last GDP proposal, and I thought like I said, they're big buildings. If there's ever an appropriate area in Monona for buildings of this scale, it's right where you have them. So I do support it. As you know, I looked to maybe have some step backs on the 6th floor. You've done some other things architecturally that help that, where you've got that different darker color in some areas, all those different eyebrows, all the different detail you did on the end caps where you've got different heights and things. So I think for me, you've done enough to make it feel okay for that area, to feel a little better and still meet your needs. You talked about impact fees. I mean, for an impact fee, there has to be an impact, right? An impact study, and then I think you're only allowed like 8 years to recoup from that impact. So your only one would be services, but some of the things I worry about, once we approve a GDP for this site, Mr. Dorn has that in his hand. He's got it. This basic density, the basic layout, the basic parking. If this is approved, he has as a guarantee from the city of Monona that can happen. So I think some of these items we need to have some certainty and clarity on to approve a GDP.
Before that, I think we can move forward with a plan based on what we have in front of us with those items as items of consideration, and council can determine if they're going to move forward without any changes in impact fees, or if they're going to require that prior to the GDP being approved at council level.
Okay, because in particular for services, for fire or police, you can't come back retroactively after GDP's been approved and say, oh, you're going to increase services. Well, you know, that's something we knew and talked about during the process. Yeah. So that would certainly be a recommendation then out of the Plan Commission that the City Council look at that and decide if they're going to address that in any way.
Yeah, and if so, it needs to be soon, as Corinne was pointing out.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Steve, could you talk about the parking? Do your residents pay extra to be able to park underground?
Yes.
So what if they choose not to pay extra?
We require them to have a parking stall if they have a car.
Okay, so they're required. Okay, so when I reword it, they can't turn it down. They have to pay. They couldn't come and just park in your surface lots in perpetuity and have an apartment there.
No, it's not an option.
Okay, thank you, because that's something we discussed at a previous one, and when we're looking at parking numbers, we have to be able to account for it and know that there is parking for not only the residents, but when the guests come, when the commercial customers come. So that's rather important.
Yep.
So
we're very sensitive to parking as well.
Yeah,
we don't want any issues.
You've been here a lot of times. You know we're very sensitive to parking too.
Yeah.
Thanks. The commercial, we talked about once we have commercial uses in, we'll know what kind of parking they need. Well, cart horse, we need to know right now what we're putting in. And restaurants, as we know, hopefully you can find somebody just as successful as Buck and Honey's, and that takes a lot of parking. So I think it's important, but it's also important for the applicant to make sure he has enough parking that business will be successful. Most of your entrances for commercial, Steve, you said were going to be on the south side, but I assume what we see in our elevations will come through and that you have two-sided architecture, so it looks like commercial fronts on Broadway. It's real
Abs-
important.
abs- Absolutely.
Yeah, it's real
Yeah,
important.
we definitely.
Very important
Yeah.
to have that. Commercial is 16,000 square feet. I was really confused on looking at the plans. There's different numbers in the staff reports, but for what we're looking at tonight then for approval, 16,000 square foot, give or take, of commercial in phase one. What do you have in phase two?
Jennifer, do you know that one offhand? I believe that one was 9,000.
I think it was 7,000 less. So yeah, that would be right.
Yes, so 9,000, yep.
9,000, so then you're still, because what you presented before was around 24,000, so you're right around 25,000 square foot of commercial?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Because I saw numbers all over the place, and that's part of what we look at on the GDP is how much commercial is going to be in there. A note, this would be more of a PIP thing, but the landscaping, I think in some recent projects we've gotten the, for some reason, smaller and smaller trees installed, and it really shows, and it doesn't show well. So I think when we look at the landscaping, I think we need to look at certainly the intensity, but also the size of the plantings. And I'm sure Rob will talk about that, but I think there's some disappointing landscaping in some projects.
That's something we did about 4 different plans before we submitted because we wanted to make sure that we did a plan here that was very heavy on natives. And so you will see that specifically with the courtyards and the PIP, but on the GDP plan, and I'm sure, you know, Rob, I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, but we went very heavy with natives here.
Great. Like I mentioned, we'll have to have some condition of approval on the TIA. Because if it's not approved or the county's not on board, then this basic GDP doesn't work. So we'll have to look at that. On your east elevation, on the parking garage, how are we finishing that? It looked a little plain. I wasn't sure I could tell what it was.
Peter, do you want to describe that just so I don't speak out of turn?
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to continue, even though all of that facade is the garage, we wanted the kind of storefront retail look that you see on the north facade of that end of the A1 building to also wrap the corner for a significant amount of the east elevation. And then we're kind of just selectively daylighting with the garage at a certain point. There's refuse and recycle room. There's a stair and an elevator on the sort of far left, which is the south of the building. But we felt it was important to kind of continue that more open, pedestrian-friendly kind of retail look. For I think probably I think it was like 60 or 70 feet of that east facade.
Yeah, I agree with that. But now the east facade of B1, I don't see any of that. So how does that go together?
Which
So
sheet
we'll
is that?
only
Chris?
really see the east facade. Okay, I got it. So if we go to page 201, we can see where you're wrapping that east. Okay, and you've got the commercial look there.
I see.
Okay, and then the rest of that is all just masonry, but there's no opportunities for any more glass or spandrel glass or anything to soften that up?
We added the two that are in sort of the recess, kind of the dark gray gaskets that you can see. We felt that was probably adequate enough to daylight the garage, but again, it's parking all back there, so we felt it most important just to wrap that corner where the pedestrians are going to be seeing it most frequently.
Okay. To address your question, the green space with the park, I am good with what the developer is proposing. I think to dedicate the park and still pay full in lieu of fees for every unit, that we need to give them green space credit for that park. And if some of that park is taken up with programming, that's just fine. As far as when Jake's looking at it or somebody's planning it, if there's some hardscape and things in that park, wouldn't bother me a bit. That's a large green space, so I think it'd be just fine. It'd be good to see some hardscape probably in there, some areas for people to use. Question maybe for Brian, the parking that's in the public streets, are we at angled now, or are we at 90 degree? What's going on with all that?
Last I heard, angled.
Why?
I'm not sure why. Doug might know why.
I do. So in the staff discussions, and this is both the staff position but also of Strand as well, that the angled, the 45-degree angled parking allows for that clearer movement. It's an easier backing up movement that doesn't break the center line either. So it will only interrupt one lane of traffic. The 90-degree, although it increases parking count, there's a greater likelihood that it may enter into the opposite travel lane. So
See, I would say the opposite, because I know people, and there's only, if you had angled parking on both sides of the road, fine, I would agree. But you have it on one side, and people are coming from the west to the east, and they're gonna try to jack all the way around and get into that angled stall, and they're gonna create all kinds of traffic issues, I believe. So if it were, we've done the 90-degree in a lot of areas on city streets, and we've had very few issues with it. This is an apartment complex. It's not a high-traffic area. And so I would just suggest that we look at that again now that you made them redraw it with angled parking, because I know the people that are coming in are going to go in there and they're going to try to make about a, what would that be, a 145-degree spin around, 135-degree spin around into there to try to get into that. And so I think you're going to create more of a traffic issue by having that angled parking. People aren't going to go down all the way to that roundabout, turn around and come back and park. They just won't. If we had it on both sides, yes, I agree. It's a smooth, nice way to park, but we only have it on the one side.
And Doug, for timing's sake, that item is part of the street design.
street design, current thinking on that, so the CSM is penciled in for the next Public Works Committee meeting, which is a week on Wednesday. The suggestion, and I've worked with the Public Works Director to get the overall civil plan included with that packet, so that Public Works members kind of know where things are. But the CSM will be considered in May, with the road design to be considered in June, is the current thinking. But at least that context is there as to what may be included within those proposed dedicated right-of-ways.
As it relates to GDP and PIP and those city streets and design, that can be seen as a separate item, because we're not counting those stalls at all, correct?
They were purposefully kept out of the allocation. I think the 34 stall deficit does not include any of those public stalls.
And I'm only mentioning that, saying I think it's appropriate feedback for this group to be talking about that, but at some point, if that could be set aside and there's additional conversation happening regarding angled versus 90 degree, and there's feedback from this group, we can take that and bring it to the Public Works group when they're doing that road design.
Yeah.
Is that
Absolutely.
satisfactory?
It's really not a GDP
Yeah.
item. It's really more of a PIP item, and where you separate road plans and PIP, I'm not sure, because I would suggest that road plans are part of the PIP.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think it's going to be dedicated to be public, but there's going to be some design element that's connected to the project itself, so.
Yeah, and if it's dedicated to the public, that's fine, then we don't have to have it in the PIP.
Yep.
But when I look at the 34 stall deficit, we've gone with developers and said, there is no parking around here, right? There's no excess parking anywhere. There's either no streets you can park on, or it's all full, so you need to have all your parking on site. Now here we've got someone that's, what are they, down 3%, 4%
Yeah.
from what they need? And we can say, well, there is some street parking available.
Yeah.
And there's street parking way above and beyond what the park needs. So there is some ability to share parking. So when something like this, I'm much more comfortable knowing that we will have street parking of some sort somewhere. And I don't know, the road coming in is 34 foot wide. I would think you could have parking on the park side on that, parallel parking, right? I mean, we park on 32s on one side in Monona, so a 34, we should be able to park on one side.
Yeah.
I know the thing said we're not guaranteeing parking there, but hey, it's our park.
Yeah.
Do we want people to be able to pull up there, especially if you're talking about farmer market and such? That might be a great place for vendors to pull up and park, and people can approach them from the park side.
And I would say, from these discussions, the internal discussions, as it relates to the plan that you see, Strand have been very involved with that. Strand, for everybody else, kind of do the city's review on any street projects. So they've been consulted throughout this, with the design kind of as put forward for the civil plans as well. So I think that's reflected when we get to the CSM and that 66 foot of right-of-way, sort of what can be accommodated within that. But I think final design, obviously subject to final approval, but I think certainly these conversations have been happening with a broader group as well.
Okay.
So.
And I'm, like, I'll be at Public Works for that meeting.
I bet you will.
I happen to have to be there. And then, I mean, the good thing is that you're gonna have at least two individuals that were here having this conversation that will also be able to be contributing to that conversation at that discussion, which I think is helpful.
Perfect. Since we're talking about the road and the dedication, everything, this is really almost the CSM, but it's also part of the GDP. And I'm curious how we are considering just a small sliver of public for the road that right now is one city schools, and then connecting to a private road, but yet this is okay with our public road to dead end into that. Has there been discussions with one city about this? Could you share that? Because this is a very unusual situation.
Yes, that the developer has led those. Steve, could you share a little more about the one city discussions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know One City was at the last Plan Commission meeting as well, but they are lockstep with us on this plan. We've been sharing every progress update with them that we've changed, and they have a copy of this current plan. They're excited about this project. They feel that it's good for the school because it will provide access for the school westbound, not only out to WPS Drive, but all the way out to what is now Topgolf Way. And right now they don't have that. Right now, all of their students and parents and faculty have to pull in and come into the parking lot and then spin around and go back eastbound in front of the base of project again. So having this east-west road become a public road from the base of project all the way through to what is now Topgolf Way is something they're very, very supportive of.
Okay, then that would get me to my question. Then why is the CSM only doing a sliver? Why are we not making that entire portion of one city schools that's private up to the roundabout that you're going to create, or traffic circle really? Are we not including that to make that a public road then?
That entire, Drew, do you want to speak to exactly how you got the CSM? But to answer your question, the entire road will be public.
Yep, so it's just a question of mechanism on how to dedicate that public street. Because One City School has a condominium plat over it, it's not easily added to the CSM, so the intent there would be, we'll dedicate that small sliver with the CSM, and then there will be a quitclaim deed through the condo plat to release what they're showing as a common element for that street to make a full 66-foot wide public.
Okay, that was not clear at all in the documentation we have, and that's a really important point, so that this is actually public road the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, that's another point that should be added to this GDP, because how do we do this without having a public road through there? I mean, I love the way you're thinking about and getting it done, but it's important to have it that way.
Yep, we can make note of that.
I got a few more, but you guys just have every question I have. You have an answer for it. What's going on? Sidewalks, why did we decide for 6 foot in this area instead of 5, which is our normal?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
Does
We
anybody?
noticed, we noticed that point as well, and we're kind of wondering the same thing in the report, because we designed it to the normal.
No, we think it's fine everywhere else in the city, so why do we, I mean, they're separate bike paths, right?
Mhm.
And 6 foot wouldn't be wide enough for a bike path, so I wonder why we're thinking that has to be 6 foot on this project when we don't do it anywhere else on the public roads.
Where is it?
Where do you see 6?
Because I saw
I see it on the
5.
the administrator's letter to the developer and to the plan commission, talks about 6 foot sidewalks on the north-south road and some on the east-west road. And I'm just wondering where that came from.
It's 5 foot on the plans.
Yeah.
But it's not what's recommended there, so that would be a
Okay.
recommended change to the plans. And I think 5 foot, unless somebody else disagrees, that's what we use everywhere else in the city. Agreed? It's a couple places in the administrator's letter, it says they'd like 6 foot sidewalks.
Do we have sidewalks in the city?
Some, we do.
Having been a part of that, I think the general consensus, and I can't specifically speak to that, but I think the consensus generally was city specs for these items, roadway, sidewalks, and so I think
So we're good with,
5
I
would be
mean, I
appropriate.
would recommend, at least from here, that I don't see this project as any different than anything else,
No.
that 6 foot would be fine.
That 5 feet would be.
Or 5
fine.
foot, sorry, yeah. Steve, a question for you. You have the belt line on one side and Broadway on the other. Have you thought about any additional soundproofing in these units? I know the one down behind Chief, they did some soundproofing. You really can't even hear the belt line. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we have, maybe Peter and Jennifer, can you talk through kind of what the new window standards have for sound mitigation? Because I don't think it's gonna be an issue here, given we do also have Topgolf, between our project and the Beltline. You know, we have talked about it, thought a lot about it. If you think of even like Yahara Terrace, you would think it'd be crazy terrible there for that project, just given you have the belt line and the water bounce, the sound bouncing off the water to the building. And I think you can hear it, but it's not terrible. So maybe Peter and Jennifer, if you could talk through kind of what we're doing with windows, that'd be great.
Yeah, the windows that we're considering have a kind of a higher noise suppression. I don't think it was a huge concern of ours, just given the farthest south point on our B1 building is still 500 feet north of the belt line. So I think actually when you're closer, you kind of feel the vibrations as much as the sound. And I think that we're kind of far enough away that hopefully it's not going to be that much of an issue. But again, the standards for the windows that we're thinking of speccing have gotten better over the years.
Okay, and it's not just that, I mean, there's a lot of traffic noise comes off of Broadway all night long, too.
Yeah, there is, and again, you know, it's an urban project, there's gonna be noise. We don't have any complaints at current one. I realize we're a little bit further down, we do have a parking lot there for most of the units, but even the units that are above the tasting room, that are right on the Broadway, we don't have any issues there right now. I think it's part of it is expectation. This is an urban project.
No, I think this is a really nice building with a lot of nice amenities. I would hate to see sound be a distraction and an excuse for people to not want to live here anymore.
Yeah, you know, the biggest issue we have with sound actually is floor to floor. So what we've been doing now is, we're insulating demising walls, we're insulating the floors a little bit thicker, putting sound mat down to kind of give those units that condo quality sound mitigation floor to floor. That's the biggest thing people complain about more than anything.
Okay. Is there any access to your underground parking for the general public?
No.
How about for your commercial tenants?
Employees only.
Okay. All right. So basically, employees will have access, so it'll just be customers that need that parking lot.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a concept plan for the park yet, or will that be part of this?
Separate PIP.
Okay.
Separate PIP, I did
Okay.
work to make sure that there was at least some guidelines or concepts included, maybe uses and things like that, but specific design, no.
Okay, and just to be clear, the letter that we had in our packet from the city administrator, those were suggestions a month ago, and most that's been handled. Some of the things that aren't, what we're looking at is what we would recommend to the city council.
Yes, and I would imagine if this were to proceed by the time second read, let's say at city council, that's another 4-6 weeks away,
Okay.
there would be even more clarity on the park, I would say.
Okay, oh no, I got a couple tabs I better look at quick. Okay, all stuff we talked about. Thank you.
All right. Bricola, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have any comments. You guys have led a great discussion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Rob?
I have comments. A bunch of stuff has been touched on, but I'm just gonna go through my list. So, I think this is a good project for the site, no problem with land use and zoning. I'm okay with the realignment of the drive. I think it actually helps the project. Appreciate the 8-foot multi-use path. I like flipping the building, the B1 building, I think is what you called it. I'm okay with the lot coverage with the part, what's going on at the park, and I'll come back to that. Parking, I have nothing else to add. Architecture and massing. First off, appreciate the visuals. That really helps give contextual information. So I appreciate all those. Those look really nice. I appreciate the addition of masonry. One comment on, well, maybe that's PIP. Okay, now I'm just going off script. Couple of questions. Why is the interior parking lot concrete versus asphalt? I'm sure there's a
Over the
simple-
top of underground parking.
Okay, I knew it was gonna be something simple. I don't really have an issue with it, but there is exceeding the code as far as parking stalls and street trees in that location.
Okay, understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, since it's over top. Okay, couple of things PIP related. I think the buildings look good. I don't have an issue with the white on the south face of the A1 building. The one thing that struck me was the green. I'm personally not a fan of the green on the building. I just didn't, the whole palette, that one kind of stood out to me. And I think it's only on the B1 building. And these might be just differences in opinion, but as far as the overall color palette, all those things, if I picked one thing that didn't belong, it would be that one. I'm not sure if any other commissioners feel the same way. Okay. On PIP, I didn't see, I'm sure you'll have dumpster enclosures as well. I didn't know if there was an issue. We typically see concrete kind of approaches for dumpster pickup. I didn't see that there. I don't know if that's a consideration. It's at an angle and it's kind of funky, but probably going to have damage to that asphalt right there. So kind of a design element to maybe look at. I'd like to see the details on the fencing for the pickleball and the dog run when that comes around. And then I'm going to jump to landscape plan. Yeah, so my comments on the landscape plan is I like the plant list. I thought there was a concerted effort to have a lot of native species, which is great. Couple of comments. I think there should be more diversity in your canopy tree selection. There's not a lot there, and what you have there is you have two of those species, the CO2, the Celtis occidentalis, and the Quercus, the pin oak. They're not going to provide any canopy shade much. I shouldn't say any. They will provide some, but they're both columnar species, and you use them pretty heavily, I believe. Yeah, your most used tree is a columnar tree, which it's a great use, I think. But I just don't feel like there's going to be a canopy for this site. You also use hop hornbeam, and that's a small tree. That's a slow growing, small canopy tree. So I think ideally, a decade down the road is that we would like to have some canopy cover in this very urban environment. So I think that could get re-looked at, and that list could grow a little bit longer. I would look at the pin oak selection as well, just because they suffer from chlorosis a lot with high alkaline soils, which are more tendent to be in urban, poor soil conditions, and when you're working with concrete. They can survive, but they'll be all yellow. So I'm not sure if that was your comment about size, Chris, the species selection, or if you were talking the installation size.
Installation
DBH.
size too, yeah.
I have no problem with 2.5 inch, 1.5 inch. I don't think we should go any further. There's plenty of studies.
No, just nice to get them though.
Yeah.
At 2.5.
Yeah, two is fine with me, frankly. There's plenty of studies saying, that prove that if you put in a smaller tree, 10 years down the road, the smaller tree is oftentimes larger than the bigger tree that you put in. My notes aren't loading here. I'm going to let someone else go. But all in all, I think it's looking really good, Steve. And a couple of things. Oh, one other landscape comment was, I think you had a bur oak. This is really in the weeds a little bit, but I think you had one as one of your parking lot street trees, and I would look at that as well too. I don't know how well a bur oak is going to do in that situation, and they're historically very low branching, very wide spreading. Love them, they're awesome, and I would look to use more oaks, frankly, in your revised plan. But those are my comments right now. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Corinne, round two.
I guess the one thing I didn't comment on is the open space, green space, and I am fine with what's proposed here, just to show support for that. Yep.
Chris?
Good.
Nothing new came up. Doug, do you have a question you want to make sure that you
Yeah,
get feedback on?
just one thing to clarify. I do think it would be in the GDP portion of this item would be shadows and icing of buildings and things like that, and sort of ability of landscaping to grow given the height, some of the heights that are proposed here. So something I had included in the staff report had omitted in my sort of verbal update here, but just maybe if the applicant could just kind of address that a little bit. I suspect it's been considered, but just how that has been incorporated into the plans, please.
And then maybe Rob.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have comments, and then maybe go to Rob first. Do you have any comments regarding shading, icing, particularly on the north side of these buildings? And then, if so, the applicant
Yeah,
can chime in.
I did look a little bit at that, and I didn't do a plant-by-plant review, but your landscape designer should look at that. I know you have some ferns and stuff, but kind of the middle of that building, it's going to get some sun, and there's plenty of examples of landscaping on the north sides, but just check your species, I think. I'm looking at some of these coneflower, milkweed, typically like full sun. I didn't look to see exactly where they're located on the plan. Busted.
There's a lot there.
Elliot, is that something you could maybe speak to, please, since you're on the call here? Elliot is our landscape architect.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the north sides of buildings, I did try to select as many shade tolerant species as possible, being mindful that there would be limited full sun exposure in those areas.
Great.
Okay. And Elliot, do you have any questions regarding the comments related to the tree selection and some of the recommendations that Rob had?
No, those are all valid points, and I'll definitely take a look at those. I agree with the, I prefer canopy trees if I can fit them in. I included a lot of columnar species based on size area restrictions, and I'll look at the Baroque and the Australia and some of the other species that you mentioned as well, and look at alternates.
Okay, wonderful. All right.
Oh, I have one more thing since we're on landscape. I think I saw you had up on the street trees along Broadway, like multi-stem specified for some of those. I'm sorry, I don't have the printout of it, but look at that too. That would be an odd configuration of a multi-stem street tree.
I don't know if I had them in the street tree right of way, but if they were multi-stem, they'd be understory, either redbud or amelanchier. So it'd be not a canopy tree, but an understory tree.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody care to make a motion on the GDP portion? Go for it, Chris.
Move approval, findings of fact 1, 2, and 3 is written by staff. Finding of fact 4, I'm going to reword a little bit. While each phase is below 30% green space, the applicant is committed to full park improvement in lieu of fees, and strike "and is" and insert "in addition to dedicating the 1.44 acre park, the city," on, and then the second to last line, visitors to development and is partially credited for. This would be in regards to the park being partially credited back for the green space, because part of it will be another one. And then on the last line, change "throughout the site can further" to "throughout the site will further support the goals." Conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is written by staff. Condition 7, just say the phase 1 precise implementation plan must be recommended to City Council for approval within 12 months of this general development plan approval. Just strike the rest, it got kind of wordy. 8, the survey map needs to be recorded prior to any construction activity, which I'm sure is his intent. And then add conditional level 11 that this is conditioned on final TIA recommendations and approvals by staff. And condition 12 that this is conditioned on the city schools agreement to make the road public from this site to the proposed traffic circles.
All right. Doug, before I get a second, anything else that you have a question on?
We need a second to discuss it.
All right. We'll get a second.
Second.
All right. Anything else, Brad?
I think just a clarification on condition 11. I have that this GDP is conditioned on final TIA approval, or final TIA with approval by city staff.
Well, not just city staff, by all approving authorities.
That's what I was
Because
going to.
we do not have this
That's what I was gonna
project
check.
without changes recommended by the TIA. Biggest one is relocating that stoplight intersection. If for any reason that would fall apart, obviously the developer probably would be scratching to try to redo this too, but we can't have an approved GDP without the traffic the way it's shown on this plan.
Thank you.
And that can't happen without an approved TIA, so it's the fact that it's been talked about, we're gonna have it, but this is based on having that approved. We're working on it.
Thank you.
Rob, with that additional clarification, you could ask the second. All right. Any further questions from the group? Kareem?
I have a question, but so does Brandon. Oh, okay. What about removing the right in, right out?
That's part of the,
That's part of the TIA. and
because
that
that
whole-
was one of the jurisdictions from the TIA may not approve the right in, right out, the county.
Okay,
But
okay.
that's still yet to be fully determined.
okay.
I think it's a good question to bring up. I'm perfectly fine if that gets, I mean, if you looked at the traffic counts coming out that right in, right out, it would have been convenient, but
Yep.
it's not that many traffic counts. And I think it would significantly change the TIA counts.
If the county allows it, it fits. If it doesn't, it still fits. Steve, do you have any questions for the group before we vote?
I don't think so.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor for the GDP. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Motion has been approved. And we are on to new business. The first item is a public hearing for the Galway companies on the request for consideration of precise implementation plan for Phase 1 of the site located between 5600 Gishel Drive and 1709 West Broadway, and this is for mixed-use development, case number 26-2026. Steve, do you have anything additional to add for the public hearing on the PIP for Phase 1?
No, I don't.
All right, we have nobody else in the room for the PIP for the public hearing section. If there's anybody online that would like to speak during the public hearing section for Phase 1 PIP, please unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll call on you. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing section and we'll go on to 7B, which is a pre-hearing conference for Galway companies on the request for a consideration of a precise implementation plan, PIP, for Phase 1 of the site located between 5600 Gishel and 1709 West Broadway, and this is for mixed-use development, case 26-2026. Doug.
So one of the things that was considered as part of this was kind of rolling these two in. There's certainly overlap as it relates to the zoning and those elements. So for anyone following along, I would direct to either my previous staff comments or the staff report. I think as part of this PIP, I would just share some of the timing as it relates to this consideration. I believe the applicant is looking to return in about 4 weeks for consideration Phase 1 PIP. This is the eastern side of the site, the two buildings there, and looking to begin the process there. That would also, of course, include the roadway construction and the dedication of the park as well. So the buildings the two buildings, the L-shape and the U-shape building, the materials have been discussed, but I think any more guidance on that would be helpful. Breaking up the massing, the building heights and things like that. A little bit more detail I think could be helpful on the courtyards, the design for that. Elevated courtyards for both buildings, connectivity there. There's an elevated pool as well as an elevated dog run. These materials did show the amenities, and these are extensive. Library co-working space, dog wash, movie room, social room, as well as a golf simulator, sauna, cold plunge, hot tub, complementing the swimming pool, as well as the pickleball courts. I think there's been some discussion about operations, how some of those things will move through as well. We'll have, for the consideration of the PIP, we'll have full stormwater plans reviewed. We'll have Strand looking at those, and we'll have kind of our review letter. The materials did include a photometric plan for lighting as well. I think both comments as it relates to lighting and landscaping will be how this seamlessly interacts between public and private areas. I think that'll be important in terms of the illumination, but also the landscaping, and let's say how that ties into the park, for example. And with the landscaping, certainly we received comments during the GDP, but staff feedback would be, of course, the tables to be to include the points. We do count those based upon private parking stalls, whether they're covered or surface level. So just having those included and absolutely making the changes that have been discussed this evening as well. So they're really the comments as it relates to the Phase 1 PIP.
All right. Brandon, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll keep my questions limited because talking's not so good right now. Just in general, curious about the phasing. Why the phasing? You're saying in 4 weeks they want to come back. The first phase or the second phase?
It would be the consideration of this PIP.
Okay. Can you talk more about the phasing plan for this and why the phasing?
Is that a question for me?
That's a question for you. Yeah, that's a question for you from a master planning perspective.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we just don't feel comfortable building more than, 357 units at once is already for us is a very, very big lift. And we want to make sure that we are absorbing those units into the market, delivering the right unit mix for the market, and getting that first phase stabilized before we were to build more in the future.
Can you talk more about, when you think about that master planning vision, like when you thought about those phases together, is that a 5-year outlook, 10-year outlook? What's your current state of your strategic planning?
That's a really good question. And if I had it my way, we would start this project this summer and deliver these units spring of 28, let it stabilize through its first year, and then start that next phase spring of 29 and deliver those spring of 31, the second phase. That would be, in an ideal world, that is what we would love to do.
Okay. That's my main question.
All right.
Thank you.
Rob, anything additional?
No.
Okay. Kareem?
Nope.
Chris?
I do a little bit. I know nothing's shown, and I know it's a private road, but to me, it all connects in when it's being built, that the street trees along the private roads. I mean, we've got a 66-foot right-of-way, 34-foot road, so it's 32, less sidewalks, still got 22 feet of terrace area, well, less the 1 foot behind. So you got 10 feet on each side, and it'd be a great area for a lot of terrace trees.
Yep.
So I think that's something it'd be nice to know that I know it's a street design, but it's part of what will be installed here, and I think that's important for the look of the whole area. And then for landscaping too, I know where Rob was talking about on the north side where they're tight to the foundation and everything, but it seems to me that we should be getting out maybe outside the property line with some terrace trees between this property and the curb line on Broadway like we do everywhere else, and not have it all right in there tight to the building, but have some nice canopy trees that can be away from the building like we would on any other road. We'd put canopy trees along the roads at fronts. So that'd be another area for me to look at for landscaping, unless
Right.
Rob tells me I'm all wet.
No, he agrees.
Okay, so it's 2 more areas for canopy trees that we should be talking about. As far as the architecture, I guess we've talked about that ad nauseum, so I'm good with that.
Kareem?
I would say the trees out front, generally I would agree that having canopy trees is great, but if it would interfere with the signage for the retail businesses, I mean, that needs to be considered too. So maybe that's a place where those I can never say that word.
Columnar?
Yes, those trees might be more
Canopy
appropriate.
trees grow to 40, 50 feet. You trim up the first 10.
Just a consideration. If they're gonna have signs, we want people to be able to see the signs,
Yep.
so.
All right, so I heard Rob mention the one item of the siding. So we've talked about the white siding, and then there was a mention of the green siding. Is there any other feedback that the commission has for the applicant regarding for the green siding on the B1 building, I believe is where it's at? Chris?
I'm really anxious to see what they come back with.
All right. Any other feedback regarding the material board selection or anything beyond even those two pieces of siding? I think it's great that we're getting back to material boards, so let's make sure that we have that be part of our question and feedback for applicants, so that way they can make good decisions.
Oh, yeah, thank you for the material board. No, I don't have any other comments or questions about. I did have a similar sort of feeling a little bit about that green as well. Just kind of stood out amongst the other colors. I think maybe it's the adjacency of the green and that brown. Like maybe the green is a little bit too brown. There's a little bit too much of a muddiness to the green for me. But other than that, no. Thanks for the material board. Yeah.
So it sounds like a little mixed feedback on the color palette. All right. Any other questions that you didn't hear, Steve, that you would want feedback from the group that you didn't hear?
I don't think so. Really, really good feedback. The only comment I guess I will make, and just to kind of more of an answer a question, I guess, is there was some discussion about a step back on the 6th floor, and you know that's something we really cannot do with this building being wood framed. If we had to step back that 6th floor, we'd be adding all sorts of steel members in there to support that. So it would make this building, you know, we would rather just remove a floor. You have a little more flexibility if you were going to build that out of post tension, but given its wood frame, we need those units to stack all the way up. So that is why we're designing it the way we are.
I think the building, I mean, I can tell you, I think the buildings look great even without that step back. And I know when I was reading that in the staff report and then look at where this building is positioned also in adjacent to other buildings, like it just makes sense for it to be straight up and not step back. We're not adjacent to single family homes where we really want a step down kind of process. This seems to be inappropriate.
Yeah, I'd just add, I think they added a lot of architectural details since the last time we saw it that really helped with some of the areas of concern we were talking about. It made it feel different on some of those upper levels.
Yeah, I would also second the straight up construction all the way to the top in the specific context of this installation. Yeah, I agree with the approach.
All right. There is no consideration of action on this item, and it sounds like we have all the pieces from the applicant that they need, so we can close 7B and move on to 7C, which is the public hearing for TG Monona, LLC, represented by Vera Becker, on the request for consideration of a certified survey map, CSM, and dedication right-of-way and outlets for the purpose of constructing a multi-use development on the site located between 5600 Gishwell Drive and 1709 West Broadway. This is case number 27-2026. And Doug, I still think it might be best for you to kind of kick us off.
I can do that, certainly. So I think this is the second time the commission has seen this CSM. I think this has more definition than the last version. That was sort of an additional sheet within the GDP. This is its true pre-hearing and sort of first pass in formal setup. So the concept here is the modification of lots to accommodate the recently recommended GDP for the site on West Broadway. This does include some modifications to both the WPS building, which is the proposed lot 3, or I should say to that lot, not the building, to the proposed WPS lot, as well as the Topgolf lot to the west, as well as the creation of the lots, lot 1 and lot 2, which would be for the future development of the GDP. as well as 2 proposed outlots. Both of those are proposed to be dedicated to the city. Outlot number 1 being the public park, just under 1.5 acres. Outlot 2 being a stormwater area that is closest to Topgolf. And so with this as well is the public dedication of streets, the public dedication of the realignment of WPS Drive, as well as the east-west, shown on the CSM as Street A. Certainly some discussion to be had, I think, about the One City element, sort of the roadway heading northeast towards the Besa project at the eastern end of the proposal, as well as just highlighting here the proposed public component to WPS Drive that would be the southern end that is currently private, closest to WPS Drive. So this is proposed as shown in this CSM. Everything coming out of Topgolf heading north would be public as part of WPS Drive.
Okay. All right, I know we touched on this a little bit during the GDP discussion, but is there any additional?
I'm sorry, we're still in.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. There's nobody in the room regarding the public hearing section. Is there any additional comments that the applicant would like to add into the public hearing section before we close that?
I don't have any at this time.
All right. Is there anybody online that would like to speak during the public hearing section? If so, unmute yourself or raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we can close the public hearing section and move on to item D, which is the pre-hearing conference for TG Monona LLC, represented by Vera Becker, on the request for consideration of a certified survey map, CSM, and a dedication of right-of-way and outlets for the purpose of constructing a multi-use development on the site located between 5600 Gisholt and 1709 West Broadway, case number 27-2026. Doug, anything additional that you didn't cover in your previous comment?
Just a couple of small things to kind of clarify some of the realignments and some of those elements. So I think some of it could sort of be classified as cleaning up some of those elements closest to the Topgolf site, for example, kind of straightening off some of those elements. I was comparing this to some of the previous CSMs that we've seen somewhat recently that have come through. The information that was shared during the GDP PIP discussion as it relates to One City was helpful because that did not look to be sort of the full expectation of that width. So I think some direction there is certainly how this aligns with the GDP that's now been recommended. And sort of those elements I think will be important, but also just specification-wise, right-of-way is all proposed to be 66 feet wide, which does meet standards that we have. Of course, we have to be mindful of the proposed Lot 3 for WPS, making sure they have public access, that they don't become landlocked through this proposed CSM. I think coordination with owners, we have a couple stakeholders here, making sure they're obviously all in support and included with this discussion is important. And as far as a practical standpoint, this will go to Public Works Committee at their May 6th meeting, and this will be coming back for a formal consideration, most likely at the same meeting as the PIP for this item. So at that point, we will have this go through sort of for standard surveying review from Strand with kind of the markups and the expectation there as well. So right now, it's just been a staff review, but it'll go through there as well. So,
all right.
Just for discussion.
Rather than calling out individuals as a group, if anybody has any comments, since we've discussed this a little bit, Chris?
Well, clearly, we'd like to see the vacation documents or whatever is going to happen with One City School come back with this, so we've got a comprehensive layout.
Yep.
Steve, can you tell me what the expectation is for WPS Drive when it hits on the south, hits Topgolf, it goes into a private site? Is there a joint access agreement, or what happens there?
It goes to two private sites, one to WPS and one to Topgolf. There's no longer any continuous easement there, east-west.
So basically, it's just a dead-end road that accesses Topgolf. I mean, it goes along. Well, WPS, it goes all along their parking lot, so it goes along the full side there.
That's correct.
So on the south, then it's a road for Top Golf to get out, to access that stoplight.
Yep,
Okay,
yep, and there's been some discussion about, do we, you know, are there bike paths, does a bike path go through there at some point in the future?
Right.
But, yeah.
okay. And is there anybody from Veerbecker here tonight?
Yes, Drew Mears is on the call, he's from Beer.
Drew, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is really well done. This is one of the most comprehensive preliminary submittals we've had for CSMs. We've had some really poor CSM submittals to look at that were full of errors, and this is a lot of good information. Well done, thank you.
Appreciate the feedback.
All right, any additional comments? All right. Thank you. We will anticipate revisiting that item in the near future. Steve, any questions that you didn't get answered for that item that you need answered?
I don't think so, just wanted to make sure there was support for everything that we're looking at in the PIP and the CSM, and we've got some really good feedback tonight, so thanks for everybody's time, and we look forward to seeing you here in about another 5 weeks.
All right, thank you. All right, item 8A, 1 through 5.
Thank you. So just as a way of update, as was mentioned, this project, the West Broadway project, is in discussions right now with CDA, so that will be on the agenda tomorrow night, and we'll continue that discussion there. As far as potential upcoming Plan Commission items, we are expecting to meet on May 11th. We'll have a couple of zoning permits, kind of back to regular business on a couple of those items for new businesses. It's also licensing time of year, so there's a couple that have been flagged that are sort of need to go through that zoning review process that may have already been operating. But it's sort of cleaning that up a little bit as well. I put the May 25th date on here with the date TBD. With this project, we are looking to try and have that meeting at the end of May. We have Memorial Day, obviously on our regular meeting date. Working with the CDA chair right now to understand if that date frees up the Tuesday after Memorial Day, which I think it would just be May 26th for that. If that's available, that would be my preference, but otherwise I'd be double booked. So I'll try and coordinate with Plan Commission. Recognizing we have submittal deadlines, but also to get something on the books here as well. So it may well deviate from the regular meeting date, just from the request and sort of workload that we have coming through. Ideally, we do have 2 meetings in May if we can. So I'll probably be sending a doodle poll out once we have a little bit more information to the commission as well.
I would suggest you try to get a consensus earlier rather than later. You can see with the scheduled meeting, we barely made quorum.
Absolutely.
In that week, I was just going to double check to see what other city meetings I have already scheduled. I think I'm good the remainder of that week city-wise overall. So if CDA doesn't land on the Tuesday, I could be available on the you and I have the same meeting, so if you're free on Tuesday, that means I'm free on Tuesday.
Great.
And we'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right. All right. And any questions from the commission? Chris?
2, the Chipotle sign that got run over, they got it back probably a year ago, and it still sits with no skirt about that far above the grade and no landscaping. I think it's time they fix that up.
We have been in contact. We have corporate, we have their attention. With the weather, they were holding off. They have been reminded that if that is not done, there was a deadline that was shared, it'll be coming back to Plan Commission.
Okay.
So they're well aware. We flagged it, I believe, last time this came up. So they're aware of it and just trying to make sure that they follow through now as well.
Okay. And then question for staff, what's going on at Besa?
So there was some ownership changes that took place
Again?
there. Right now it's in receivership. So from the original owner, so the receiver is working with the contractor to sort of close out the building permits, is the current situation there. So You may have noticed there have been some more activity again recently to get that. So they're moving towards looking to get occupancy for floors 3 and 4, which would be the apartments. The live workspaces below would expectation, and there's some coordination there with other departments, but would be that they need to be white boxed. Each of those is going to be a separate building permit, so most likely that is still to come, still to follow. But their focus right now, as I understand it, is getting floors 3 and 4 of the traditional apartments to get those ready.
So is it empty other than the dental clinic?
Just the dental clinic has, they're on a temporary occupancy right now, yes.
Okay. The rest of the building's just empty, waiting.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, German.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
In the case of Chipotle, what enforcement do we have as package?
We're seeing we're not happy.